Game companies are getting lazy. I'm seeing visually stunning games with huge potential, but are only a percentage of what they could be on release, only getting fixed after years of updates or through paid DLC. It's bad, both for the player base and the publisher, and it's been really disappointing. But before I continue, this next minute is sponsored by World of Warships. World of Warships is a free game and available on PC. The game is a team-based sea battle that requires different strategies and tactics. The game features over 400 historical ships that you can control in beautiful maps and unique living landscapes. You can also customize your own ships in the way you like or the way it performs best. There are more than 44 million players in 5 different classes: destroyers, battleships, cruisers, aircraft carriers, and submarines. Not to mention new events and missions frequently. Imagine playing World of Warships with Godzilla or even Kong as the commander of your ship. What about the incredible characters from Azure Lane or battles against giant monsters from Big Hunt? These are some of the previous collaborations with World of Warships, so what are you waiting for? Download World of Warships today through the first link in the description. And don't forget to register with the code below to get a huge starter pack. During the registration, use the code FIRE to get free 200 doubloons, 1 million credits, tier 5 USS Texas, 20 times Restless fire camouflage, and a 7-day premium account. Thank you again for sponsoring this video, and back to the video. When you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing a game to look really cool, charge a full $60 price tag, and get a huge community hyped up, why would you release that game unfinished? Why would I want to drop my day's worth of salary at Wendy's on a game that doesn't even feel completely fleshed out? It doesn't make sense, right? But what's funny is that this seems to have become the norm for many big titles within this last decade of online gaming. Sometimes it almost feels like we're paying $60 to play the beta version of a game that's still a few years away from completion. Take a game I've been playing a lot recently, like Sea of Thieves. Its release was very mediocre. While the game had potential, the content was definitely lacking for a AAA title, and the game lost a huge chunk of its player base relatively quickly as a result. However, with consistent updates over the past few years since its release, the game now lives up to where it should have been back in 2018. But what was the point of that? Because of how mediocre the release was, anyone that played the game before the game was fully updated dropped it not too long after. Now, I understand that Rare planned on essentially evolving the game based around how people were playing the game, but on release, it was just so empty that it didn't live up to the majority of people's expectations. And while the idea of an ever-expanding world through consistent updates is enticing, I feel that it has led many developers to essentially crutch on this idea. Think back before games could be updated through online patches. When games were released, that was it. You couldn't simply go back and change parts that were stale, or add onto a game that wasn't fully realized. And this is where a lot of game companies, I feel, miss the mark. Instead of releasing a complete game, they send out a game with no meat on its bones, and then slowly update it over time, rather than publishing a fully finished game where everything else added extra is essentially a cherry on top. The ability to add more to your game after it's been released is great for the player base, but a lot of game companies have decided to basically abuse this practice to make more money. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but Battlefront 1 is the most popular example of this practice. The game released with 4 maps, barely any content, and while it had potential for a full $60 game with Star Wars as its concept, it was extremely lacking. But EA knew this, and after a bit of time, dropped this $50 season pass that had the rest of the game. The beta was almost the same thing it was on release, with only minor changes. The rest of it was basically held back so they could get 50 more bucks from us. When I said that games felt like they were being released in their beta state, I wasn't kidding. But with Battlefront 2, EA had a chance to redeem itself, and while it did in a way, it still ran into issues of its own, as its release was also very piss poor. And honestly, I can give you the 2-hour rant, but instead, to sum it up,
fix the online, fix the single player, fix the loot boxes, fix the battle points and heroes, fix the objectives, fix the controls, fix the vehicles, and then boom, you have a great game here.
The funny thing is, DICE must have watched Dunky's video or something, because basically everything but the single player is a lot better. In comparison to how EA abused online in Battlefront 1, Battlefront 2, they actually went back and fixed everything they could. And while this is definitely an improvement from their last game, they still crutched on the ability to update their game after launch, which resulted in a very mediocre game on release that was dropped by a large chunk of the community only to get fixed later. But by this point, the only people purchasing it are the ones that are getting the game for 50 to 75% off because the game has lost its hype and has already received bad reception. And stuff like this is still happening. Battlefield 2042 instantly flopped on release, and now is slowly getting better after some updates, but considering EA's track record, it won't be fixed for another year or two. And I just don't understand. There's no way game companies can play these games and feel like they live up to expectations. And inevitably, it ends up worse for both the consumer and company. The player base is disappointed with a game they were really looking forward to, especially after spending $70 on, and the game company loses out on a huge market of players and in-game purchases. And now they're taking the same route as Battlefront 2, making updates to the game to try to salvage what's left of a potential community after they already released the game. Again, back in the day, you couldn't do this. You couldn't just fix up your game and drop the price to still profit a considerable amount. Games had one chance. If it flopped on release, well, tough shit, buddy. Better luck next time. And I feel like that's why games felt like they had more heart to them, because you needed to get it right the first time. And it's really unfortunate, because so many modern games are feeling unfinished. Many of them just not living up to their full potential. And when they finally do feel complete, it's only after years of updates, or behind a giant paywall. The most egregious act of this is from Destiny 2. When the game dropped, me and my friends bought it for the full $60 price tag, and then a few months later, they decided to make it free. Free. I just paid $60 to play a free game. And what's arguably even worse is that after they made it free, they started charging another $20 to $30 for new DLC. So if I want to actually play the rest of the game, I have to spend another 20 to 30 bucks? But what's even funnier is that after I paid for that DLC, they dropped a new DLC for even more money. So instead of making free updates for a game I've already paid around $100 for, I gotta buy more. And what's even funnier is that the DLC and Season Pass I bought are now obsolete. You can no longer play what you previously purchased. Because Bungie doesn't want you paying for what you bought, they want you to buy their new DLC that just came out. And it's this concept of essentially abusing the ability to make online updates to make extra money off your player base that sucks. Being able to make online updates is a privilege. Dropping day one patches to fix bugs and glitches is great, and taking a fully realized game and just adding that icing on the cake by expanding on the world with more content holds and grows a community of players. And while there are games that use this to their advantage, I'm seeing a lot of companies attempting to exploit the system so they can release unfinished games or snag more money by locking huge portions of their game behind paywalls. Honestly, it's disappointing, but I can only hope for the better, and hope that in the future, companies use the ability to make online updates for the benefit of the game and their player base. Thanks for watching. And thank you World of Warships for sponsoring this video. Textbooks are expensive, guys. Jeez. And thank you to my patrons, especially you, Line. Anyways, take it easy, y'all. See you later.